Hello, welcome everyone to the latest edition of True Potential's Do More With Your Money podcast. We're recording this on Thursday the 15th of August, and I'm joined today by True Potential Wealth Management's Head of Central Advice, Neil Rayner. We've got Donald Sumboy from True Potential Investments, who's Head of the Pension Technical Team, and on his first podcast we've got Sam Knowles, who's Team Leader of the Pension Technical Team. So welcome, gentlemen. Today's subject is triple lock. So I was talking to Neil beforehand, and he thinks triple lock could be something to do with a boating holiday on the Norfolk Broads. It might also be a new Olympic sport or even a wrestling hold.
Could be.
But I think the fact that we've got two pension experts on the podcast today indicates that it may be something else. It is the triple lock pension.
It is.
And Donald, if you wouldn't mind taking it away and explain to everybody what triple lock means, probably something that people last heard in the run-up to the general election, but not since.
Yeah, it's kind of faded out in the background, but it's always there. For us to tackle triple lock, we have to start with the state pension. So what is state pension? State pension is just that regular sum of money that comes from the government and paid to people that have reached their state retirement age. Now, attached to the state pension is closely attached to it is the triple lock. So essentially, triple lock is a mechanism that allows you to operate your state pension yearly, April every year. It's just to increase that pension in line with three different matrix, depending on which one starts. So the first one is the earnings, your average earnings on a yearly basis. So once you're an average earning on a yearly basis, or your inflation rate, or an arbitrary number, which is 2.5. Now, we'll come back to 2.5 because a lot of questions come out with why 2.5 and not why not 3. So where your state pension in April every year, so the government will want to operate that state pension. The current state pension now is 11,502. Now, for next year, what happens? So the government would look at the rates, those three matrix, and go, which one is the highest of the three? So if your average earning is higher, they will use that to increase the state pension for next year. If it is your inflation rate that is higher, then they will use that as a matrix to do that. If earnings and inflation are both lower than the 2.5 arbitrary number, then they use 2.5 to operate that. So that's essentially what the triple lock does. Triple lock, you can look at triple lock, it's like a protection. You can call it like an earning power protection for your state retirement age that goes up yearly.
And I guess if we were looking to reset now, we're in August, but looking at the three factors there, average earnings are growing by just over 4%.
That's correct.
Inflation's below 2.5.
That's correct.
So
that's essential. Just giving an example, let's use, so you're right in terms of what the inflation is. Inflation today is at 2.2. So average earning, you're right, is about, averaging around 4.55%. But last year, which a good example was 2023. In 2023, the average pension went up by 10.1%, and that was because inflation rate was higher.
Sure.
That was the highest at 10.5. But the current rate we're paying now in terms of state pension is $220 per week. Now that was a measure of this is actually a measure of your average earning, because inflation back in September last year, September was 6.9, but average earning was 8.5. So average earnings. So you have those 2 years for comparison. 2023, because of inflation was at 10.1, they used the inflation measure to calculate to get the operate. But in 2024, average earning was 8.5, inflation was 6.7, so we used the 8.5 to measure it. So that's essentially how triple lock works. So it's some form of protection, and just introduced within state pension to upgrade it. It's just final thing to mention here is because a lot of people think triple lock is actually written into law. It's not enshrined in law at all. It's just a commitment by the three big parties to go look, but we'll try to look at that to make sure that works. But what is actually written in law in the Pensions Act 2014 when it started is actually that your state pension will go up by your average earning. So it's just a bit of a wiggle room because it's not written in law. We know that your average earning would always be a marker for your state pension, or based on the commitment from the three political parties, the big three, that's what they would call, it could be either inflation rate or also 2.5%.
And the intention is to make sure that somebody who's surviving purely on a state pension has an increase which will hopefully keep up, if not exceed, inflation.
That's correct. That's absolutely what it is. So they have that acceptable standard of living.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, so that inflation doesn't strip out their earning at all.
Okay.
Then the average earning one is simply so that they are, yes, they are retired, but they're still within the economy as well. So as the economy grows, then they can get something as well with that as well. So that's where the average earning and the inflation's parity comes in.
But it comes at a cost. If you think about the bill for pensions, for paying pensions, is about £124 billion a year, out of which triple lock could equate to about 10 billion of that.
Yes.
So that's an annual increase, and it has to be paid for. So what has the new Labour government had to say about triple lock?
In terms of a triple lock, the commitment they had then in 2006, when initially they started with and the Pensions Commission started with, what do we need to do to review the pensions and all that. So it was actually part of a general review and the 3 recommendations for triple lock. So that was when it started really. Then they had the commitment. The commitment was really high, but in terms of, we'll do that. And that was because in 2006, inflation rate was 2%. And average earning was 3.5% and all that. So you could go, 2%, 2.5, then 2.5. It's about the same marker. But obviously we had the cost of living as well that pretty much just, stirred everyone to wake up. So at 10.1%. So like you've said, I mean, we're literally spending close to 128 billion, like you've said. It's a huge amount of money to spend. And that is actually set by projection from the IFS, that's the Institute for Fiscal Studies, to rise to 154 billion. By 2028. So that's a huge amount of money to actually cope with. So in essence, it is expensive, but how do we actually make it work and how do we make it pay? So that's another question that we need to address.
I think we do. And I think the root of triple lock was going back to the Pension Commission review in 2006.
That's correct.
And it took 6 years to get this in place.
Yeah.
And the other 2 parts of that were the introduction of auto-enrollment pensions.
That's correct.
Which we look after here at True Potential.
Yes, yeah.
But also the fact that state retirement age would have to be reviewed, because 124 billion going up to say 158 billion by the end of the decade is significant. And one way to make the money last longer is to push back the date you get pension. And
that had to happen as well. And that was part of the recommendation as well. And the realization that, look, something has to change. And one of the things that needs to change, you've said the auto-enrollment came in 2012, which was part of the recommendation. The second recommendation, which was a huge part, was what you've touched on, was the fact that the state pension age will have to be reviewed. So that's why we have, so now it's currently age 66. So if you're anyone born after April 1960, it's going to be 67 before you get your state pension. April 1977, anyone born after April 1977, you'll have to wait till age 68 to get that. Yeah. So 66 now. After April 1960, it's going to move to 67. Then anyone born after April 1977, you will have to wait till 68.
Well, I think Sam will be 100 before he gets his state pension.
I think yes, I've told him so many times. Yeah, he's definitely. I'm sure you'll probably be 102 by the time you start. I mean, in fact, talking about it, when pension started, state pension, the advent of state pension in 1908, the life expectancy there was 42, and state retirement age was 70. So something has actually turned on its head now. So, I mean, you're right, Mark. At a point, it will have to continue to review that state pension age. Otherwise, it's just a hole that we can't pay for. It's a whole lot of money to pay for.
And this is where, Neil, and the work that you do and the advisors do with clients is really important to say, don't rely on a state pension only.
Yeah.
So what can our viewers do, Neil, that will help towards retirement?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things they can do. Obviously, everybody, if you look at, we mentioned the amounts of £11,500 for a full state pension. That's a full state pension. Yeah. If you looked at a basic state pension, it's around £8,800 a year.
That's correct.
So, there's a big difference between that. And the reason why there's a big difference between those two figures is because of qualifying years or, contributions over the years, which is something that they could look at when they're looking how to plug the gap and afford these pensions, which is estimated at 158 billion at 27-28. So a massive amount for the government to fund. But on the client side, they can do a lot. So they can do a lot of tax planning, and this is something that we talk to clients every day. So looking at how much you can afford, how much you want on retirement, how much you can afford to contribute on a monthly basis. Then, the great thing about a pension is talking about the tax relief that you get on your contribution, which is your automatic 20%. And then if you're a higher and an additional rate, you get an additional amount on top. So there's a lot they can do. We also talked recently as well, Mark, before about using other tax efficient stuff. So things like an ISA, utilising the 20,000 allowance. Why do we say that? Is because when a pension, you put contributions in, you get tax relief at the start, but when you do take it out, you can get tax dependent on your position, and then it brings into play the personal allowance. So you've got 12,500 of tax-free income per year, but then obviously if you do take your pension income, it's income and it's classed as income, so you're going to get taxed on it and anything above that 12.5. So basically, it's planning, and it's also speaking to a financial advisor, and your financial advisor will tell you your options. He'll talk to you about your pension contributions. More importantly, he'll look at your partners, if you have a partner, your partner's income as well, and how much they've got coming in and what types of income they've got coming in. But it's basically a chat with a financial advisor to assess your personal situation.
Okay. And Sam, pension freedoms came along, but pensions are still not simple, are they?
No, not at all.
Otherwise, we wouldn't need pension technical experts like you.
Very true.
So, what sort of thing do you come across that both clients and advisors ask on the pension side?
I think especially in regards to this, and we've touched on sort of the uncertainty and how it's not written into law in regards to the triple lock. There can be a bit of nervousness almost with particularly younger clients, and how to save. Do they need to rely on a state pension, etc.? And I think it's as Neil says, I think the way you need to think about it and what most people want is probably just a bit of clarity and certainty. And this is where financial advisors can help. The likes of Pension Technical can help our clients, just to explain to them what they need to do, how they can plan, so that that they're not relying or even speculating on how is the state pension going to help me in the future.
Yeah, I think it's there's two sides to it. There's the accumulation phase, and then there's the deaccumulation, or drawdown as it's commonly known as. And we try and help on both sides of the equation there.
Yeah.
Get as much in as early as possible into a pension and other tax advantageous ways of saving and investing.
I think that's the point, Mark. It's start early, because there's a lot of people who maybe haven't started early, but they're of a certain age. For example, you could be 30 and you think, well, I should have started a pension when I was 21, 22. Yeah, okay, but not the case. You can have quite a healthy pot, even at 40, because you've got tax on top, and it's about starting, putting a little bit away, just as how much you can afford every month. You get the great thing about tax relief. If you're in a company scheme, an auto-enrollment scheme, you're getting employer contributions as well. And over the years, that builds and builds and builds, and set yourself a goal as to how much money you want and how much you can achieve, and, track that over time.
And we've just touched on here 3 different areas of pension. It's supposed to be pension simplification, but you put a tag called pension on a state pension, but it's much different to a personal pension.
It is.
We get a lot of clients asking us about inheritance tax planning and how pensions can be effective with that.
Yep.
And Donald, you and I as trustees of the True Potential Scheme, we see a lot of this every week, where we have to make a decision where a client hasn't necessarily had the time to be able to consider what happens on the unfortunate event of their death and the expression of wishes. So could you spend just a couple of minutes on that, please?
Yes, it is. It's something a lot of people don't want to talk about, death, it's death is inevitable to everyone, but we're hoping that we live long and so that we don't die young but a lot of people have pension, and your pension really is out of your estate as well. So that's where your inheritance tax planning come in, to speak to an advisor to do that. Where you have a pension, what you really would need is not the will. You need an expression of wish in place. So what a will does to your estate, an expression of wish does to your pension. So what you really do want to complete an expression of wish. And in simple terms, what an expression of wish gives to you is the certainty that we are carrying, as trustees, we are carrying out your wishes. What your last is like a last wish and testament. we will carry on. So this is where you want your money to go to. This is who you want to be a beneficiary to your pension, or where you want your money to go to when you die.
Yeah.
Eventually. So without that, then you're literally giving the powers to somebody else to make that decision for you as well, and which is not something you want to do. So pension is, whilst in terms of we call it the life of retirement, where savings for retirement. So it's pension, but you are saving for retirement, and the journey for retirement doesn't stop when you retire. You can still continue to build up your pension pot, and that's what we do best here as well. And obviously intergenerational, passing wealth to your your intergenerational passing wealth to them as well. So you can fund your pension, whether how age you are. Yeah. Make sure you're doing that. So to pass that on easily, you want an expression of wish in place.
And Donald's pulled a great point up there about the beneficiary side of it. If no one likes to talk about the event of death and what happens, but say your partner, is not here anymore, you have his control of his pension. That's set out in the expression of wish. We tell clients what they can and do with that pension, and it's really important because they can then start to take an income from that pension, whereas normally they just say this is a big lump sum and it's put into their estate. And there's a lot of rules and regulations about that. We talk about pre-75 and post-75 rules, which is from a different taxation point of view, but having and speaking to a financial advisor gives clients that comfort and make sure they're aware of all their options when they do receive something like a beneficiary pension, because they might want to have an income now.
Absolutely.
An additional income because their partner's not here anymore. And it's really important that they understand that.
I think also as trustees, one of our responsibilities is to get money paid to beneficiaries at a very sad time, as quickly as possible. Yeah. And it's often missed that we don't have to wait for probate. As trustees, the pension sits outside of the estate, as Donald said, and we can act quickly before the probate process either begins or even ends there. So it's to try and make life as easy as possible for those who are left behind in sad times.
Yeah.
But pensions, there's no decision to be made if somebody hasn't started saving into a pension. So that's the message that's coming across loud and clear. That's the best thing to do is save as much as possible, as quickly as possible, get the government help through tax relief, and don't rely on just one particular source of income during retirement.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the full state pension, if you like, so let's just use that one. Everybody works for the majority of their life and would probably qualify for the full state pension. So yeah, that's great. That's a good amount of income that you've got on retirement, but probably, Donald was talking about the cost of living earlier on, may not be enough or will not be enough. So, like you've just said, Mark, get a good head start. You're already getting quite a bit free from the government from a tax point of view, and over 20, 30, 40 years, a substantial pension pot when you retire.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the discussion, and just to add to what Neil said, the discussion regarding state pension as well, because you already know what it is. And it can only give you that minimum, just minimum standard of living. It's not a moderate or a comfortable one. So what you can actually rely on is what you have actually saved in a private pension. So if you don't have an employer pension and you're relying on a state pension, you can't rely on that for life. But you can rely on what you've saved in a private pension, and that's what we do here at True Potential. So grow your private pension pot. And any other thing that comes from either from the state or an employer, it's just an added bonus.
Well, if you looked at as well the aspect of the state versus a personal, the main thing for me is flexibility.
Absolutely.
So your state is your guaranteed income. You know what you're going to get basically every month. But if you wanted to change that and you wanted to take, £1,000 out your pension every month instead of £1,200, you can do that. It's very flexible and it can change to your circumstances as you get older.
Yeah, and Sam, on the age that you can draw pension, let's just be clear. It's defined at the moment that the state pension kicks in at 66, going up to 67 years old. For you, as I said before, 100, 102. With a personal pension, at what age can somebody access that?
It's much earlier, and it's currently age 55. Obviously in 2028 that's looking to go up to age 57, but again that's a 10-year gap there that you can already start to reap the benefits of what you've saved if you have been saving into a personal pension rather than relying on the state again. So there is so many benefits to, again, starting early, planning correctly for your retirement, because some people may not want to retire at the state pension age. They may be aiming for 55, 60, and the only way you can do that is by starting early, contributing into your personal pension, and again, just not relying on the state.
No, I think that's the message. Don't rely on the state.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a negative message. It's reality, because the retirement age can be pushed further on, and you have to live longer and longer to get that.
Yeah, and when you're looking at those figures, Mark, of 124 billion what it's costing the government now, and 158 and moving up to 27, 28, there may be a point where the government doesn't offer state pension anymore. There may be a cut-off age.
I mean, the conversation going on, because even if you like the main conversation going on regarding sustainability, adequacy, and fairness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's actually to err on the side of caution to go, look, at some point will this end? Mm-hmm. So, state your personal pension is really the way to go, because you never know, because those interviews and people, those voices are now getting louder every time.
Yeah.
So is it fair that they're actually increasing that every year? Mm-hmm. So can we sustain it as a nation? Can we pay for it? Then what about the adequacy as well? And also you have the cross subsidy as well. High earners, apparently, because the new state pension is now, it's a new flat rate.
Yeah.
So high earners will tell you they are paying more, they are paying more tax into that, but they are paying the same thing. So how does that actually? So everyone whichever way you look, there's a conversation.
Another things come into play as well. You talk about the big problem that's coming on the horizon is care home costs, mm-hmm. and can the government afford to fund for this continuing, but also current care home costs? So one of them would have to give at some point in the future.
It has to, yeah. The health. I mean, the state pension alone was 4.6% of GDP, of our national GDP and everything. Second to health alone. Yeah. 211 billion was spent on health alone. Mm-hmm. And that's just looking at the pension, the state pension alone. But if you add any other benefits as well, we're talking about 311 billion on just Social Security alone. So it's a huge chunk of money too.
Well, you can understand why none of the two major parties wanted to discuss or suggest any changes to triple lock. Yeah. There's 12.6 million people drawing a state pension at the moment. Yeah. That's enough to to change the outcome of an election.
I mean, it does, yes.
But there's a government in now that's got a significant majority. Yeah. If changes are going to be made, you would expect them to be announced perhaps in the autumn statement in the next couple of months, or it may be in the next term. But what we do know at the moment is that we've got the pension benefits, we've got the advantages of saving in a pension, and I would encourage everybody to maximise what they can, put in as much as possible. Yeah. You don't want to be a hermit, but put as much as you can into the pension. I know it's a message that we keep repeating, and one or two viewers might think, oh, here they go again. Yeah. But we can see the benefit, and we can see clients who are benefiting from their past disciplines.
You don't have to give a massive amount. You just want to start.
Yeah, that's it.
You might think your priority on your 21, 22 is going out on Newcastle on a Saturday night or paying your mobile phone bill. And for a lot of 21, 22-year-olds, it is. Yeah. But you don't have to give a great deal. You just have to start. And every time you do start and every time you make that contribution, you're getting that tax relief.
Yeah, put money out of harm's way.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good.
That's it.
All right, gentlemen. I think that's been a good discussion on pension triple lock. Thank you, Donald, Sam, and Neil.
No problem.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. If you've liked it, please leave a comment. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And our next podcast will be also on pensions. It's how to optimise workplace pension, which is something we just touched on in this podcast. So thank you for your time, and see you next time.